This episode of A Conversation with John Conenna is sponsored by Generate. In today's digital age, staying ahead means harnessing the power of generative AI. Wondering how your small or medium-sized business can join this revolution? Look no further than Generate, your strategic partner for integrating cutting-edge generative AI solutions. We create personalized plans, adapting existing AI technologies to fit your specific business needs. Plus, our expert team provides essential training, empowering you to make the most of these innovative technologies. Interested in transforming your business with AI? Reach out to us at generateteam@gmail.com. That's generate, GENERAIT, team@gmail.com. And now, on with the episode.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of A Conversation with John Conenna. Today, it gives me a great pleasure to bring in this gentleman who I've known since 1977-78. Personally, I used to always see him, and it's just amazing that he's still involved in this great game we call hockey. I'd like to bring in today Gene Ubriaco, the Director of Hockey Operations, Senior Advisor for the Chicago Wolves here in Chicago. And of course, his record speaks for itself. Been playing hockey since the days of Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, where he was born. Gene, I have to ask that first question. What is going on with you, young man, these days?
With me?
Yeah.
Well, we're still we're going through unfortunately not a great season, but
Yeah.
The nice part is that we're second in the league in attendance,
Right.
and our fans, and we're in our 30th year, and looking for bigger and better things in the future.
Exactly. And of course, just like anything else, and if anybody knows it, it's you who's been around this game forever and a day, being the player and the coach and being in the front office like you have for so many teams. There's always going to be the peaks and valleys, right, Gene?
Of course, yeah. If you're in this business long enough, you're going to have every type of
Yeah.
season you can have, and I appreciate our players. I wish it's going to be a little difficult. We've got 3 games left, but knowing our players and which they've done all year, they've given out their best. It's just one of those things. Word counts. Actually, we've had a great power play. We're great on penalty killing, like in the top 10, each of those categories all year. But a 5-on-5, we're not, we don't score a lot of goals, and that's really. And then obviously, when you don't score goals, we didn't do too well in the shootouts or the 3-on-3 overtimes.
Yeah, the overtimes, yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you, this kind of nice the way we kind of opened it up here today, because we'll talk about the game. And of course, you're talking about 5-on-5, 3-on-3, how the game has evolved, how the game has changed from the days of Gene Ubriaco as the player to Gene Ubriaco as the coach. Of course, here's the craziest question of the interview. You have seen many changes, right, my friend?
In the whole game?
In the whole game.
That's correct. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm kind of really appreciate that now at my age, because kind of like when I came into the game, I was born when I was born. I pretty well cover the 40s since the 40s till now. I've been involved in hockey at some level, and I go back to one of my first heroes was a fellow named Don Grosso, who played in the 30s for the Detroit Red Wings.
Wow.
And had a lot to do with, and this was in the 30s, there was no red line. And
right.
So there was a couple of blue lines, I think probably the circles, but Don Grasso became kind of a relative of mine. My uncle married his niece, and so we followed him, and he was our hero in the
Wow.
family. And they say he was the reason they put the red line in because he got so many breakaways when he played for the Detroit Red Wings.
Right, right, right.
And
Yeah,
so they, as the game went on, they added the red line, and they say he's one of the reasons. And well, that was a story we told in the Sioux,
yes.
our hometown, and I'm sticking with it.
Hey, what a great story. And, Gene, to bring up Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, I mean,
Yes,
yourself, the Esposito brothers, Chico Mackey, Lou Nanny. I'm sure I've
yes.
missed a few other ones that maybe,
Ivan Boldriff, you got
yeah,
Jerry Korab,
Jerry Corb. I mean, the talent,
Mackey, yeah,
yeah, the talent that came out of that Sioux. I have this argument constantly with my son, Gene, of the game today to the game when there was 6 teams. And I
yes,
used to tell my son in arguments, I would say, listen, these guys were trying to make 6 teams before 1967. The talent
correct.
you had to be not good. You had to be great to make a team. Do you disagree or agree with me?
No, that's there's no doubt. Well, only 6 teams. I can
Before
remember,
67, yeah.
yeah, I can remember going over and watch the Detroit Red Wings, and they would have over 100 guys at camp
Jeez.
because the Red Wings had, of course, the Red Wings, Indianapolis, Edmonton, Omaha, and
Wow.
so with those 100 guys, it was difficult, and obviously, and those years, I can remember Gordie Howe when he first came to camp. My mom and I would go to all the training camps because our neighbor was Marty Pavlich. He was a
Okay.
neighbor of mine, and Marty played for the Red Wings.
Wow.
And I can remember at 12 years old, him having the whole team over by his home, which was on right in our neighborhood. And I met Gordie Howe and all those players that played for the Red Wings. And I was 12 or 13 years old.
So you saw Sid Abel, you saw Lindsay, you saw,
Sid Abel,
yeah,
Lindsay Howe,
Terry Sawchuk
yeah,
then too. Yeah,
Gary Sawchuk, all of
yeah,
them.
yeah.
So we would go over and with the ferry it was a ferry went across the river. It was a short distance, only maybe a half a mile, maybe not even that. And we would go over and watch them at the Puller Ice Arena.
Right. Incredible. You know, you played in the NHL, which, I was looking at your stats even just last night, and I saw you had some great stats with Pittsburgh and with the Seals. And I still remember when you came to the Blackhawks here in 69-70 season. And of course, at that time, the coach was Billy Ray of
Yep.
the Blackhawks. Was it your accord that, okay, this is it, I'm going to stop after 69-70 and get into coaching? Or do you think you could have played a couple more seasons?
Well, it really was a case of, I mean, I think, I scored 18 goals or 19 goals after having a couple of big years in the American League. And for some reason, after when I was in Pittsburgh, I didn't get in part of the draft because I was owned by the Hershey Bears.
Okay.
I was not I was a decent player, but I was a terrible agent.
Well, we can't be everything, right?
Yeah, that's right. We didn't have agents. I think I
Right.
was one guy that certainly could have used one, but because what I did is I would belong to the Toronto Maple Leafs, came out of St. Mike's. I played with Frank Mahovlich, and I know you had Smitty on there. That was
Yeah,
one
Gary
of our
Smith. Yeah,
goalies, Gary Smith.
suitcase. Yeah.
Dion was just starting there my last 2 years. He was a rookie, and then you name it. and then I went to training camp with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They owned my contract because they paid my schooling to Toronto St. Mike's. And in fact, I was, I roomed with Bobby Bond.
The
And
defenseman, number
yeah,
21.
yeah, that Bobby Bond was, they put me with some pretty good players, Tim
Sure.
Horton, Bobby
Timmy Horton.
Bond, and of course the Red Kelly. Those
Oh,
are my
wow.
roommates,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and uh, and so they had me, with the right people, because now looking back, they don't put rookies with guys that aren't going to play. But
Exactly.
after camp, they had offered me a contract, uh, and it was called a C form. And in those days, I didn't know it. I wish I did. I know it now. But the C form told you how much money you were going to make in the NHL,
I
and it
see.
was like you were bound by that C form to play. If you played on Toronto, they already had a contract for you.
Okay.
And I was offered $500
Wow.
to sign it, like really big money.
Gene, what year was this when they offered you
This would
$500?
be 1950. This would be 1958, 50. No, pardon me. This would be 1954, 55,
And this was
56.
with Toronto St. Mary's, right?
But Toronto, and $500 was big money.
Sure.
So and like I realized after I was reading a book by Timmy Horton, who in his book he relates that he signed the C form and he held out for a little while. And one of his friends, he was fortunate; he had someone that knew the business. Told him, and they offered him, if you can believe it, they offered him $400.
Wow.
At the time. That was about 3 years before me.
Sure, sure.
And one of his friends says, Tim, you better sign it, because if you don't sign it, you never know, because they own
Exactly.
your rights anyway.
Yeah, because they
Okay?
could blackball you right
And
there.
here I get $500.
Yeah.
Can you imagine me turning down? And I turned it down.
Jeez.
And can you imagine that, not knowing that other people had, signed for less?
Sure,
And
exactly.
so there I
Incredible.
went right after my years in St. Mike's. Instead of sending me to the American League, I didn't even go to camp. I think that first year they sent me out west to New Westminster,
Okay,
and I played on a line with Max McNabb, if you can imagine.
sure.
And the coach was Hal Lako,
Who became the
and
coach of the Canucks? Yeah.
I played in the Western Hockey League, and I got what did I score? 30 goals, I think, or something. And in the Western Hockey League, and then the next year they brought me to camp
Yeah,
with
incredible.
Toronto Maple Leafs. But I was kind of labeled, I think. He's I probably thought I was better than I was, and that
Hey,
and there was only 6
I
teams.
don't care whatever, if it's now or then, well, even then, but then was the time to make it to that level was something. I don't care
Yeah,
what you say,
yeah,
I
yeah.
labeled or not.
Anyway, we got through that, and
Yeah,
and
I
and
have,
thank
I
God,
have to,
I
I
had a
have,
good career. I'm happy about it.
oh, sure. I have to ask you, so after the playing career, did you have this passion that you wanted to coach? You wanted to, I want to do this. I mean, when does this kind of hit for you that, here, the career is over, you make this decision and you start to get into coaching because it really starts to take the great turn for you.
Yeah, it came well after having 2 decent years and then being traded. I was traded to Oakland Seals from the Pittsburgh Penguins, and and then after scoring that many goals, and then before I started with the Oakland Seals the next season at training camp, my contract, I had to get a new contract, and I think I asked for like 24,000. I think I was making. I went from 13,000 the 17,000 to I asked for 24, and Frank Selke Jr. was the manager, and I said it was only a 10% raise, and I remember him writing me a letter, and I still have the letter, by the way.
Wow.
And I'm going to put it in a book that I'm putting together. But anyway, he said, I said it was 10%, and he says, I know you went to St. Mike's, Gene, but that's a 12% raise.
Wow.
So I didn't sign. I went to camp unsigned.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, Bill Torrey was the assistant manager. And they met me at the airport, for God's sakes, the year before when I got traded.
Sure.
So they thought highly of me. But then when I asked for a raise, they didn't think so much of me.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So I hardly played there. And then
Sure.
lo and behold, they traded me to the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
And right at Christmas.
Yeah, Chris, I remember it well.
Right at Christmas. And I hardly played with the Blackhawks. And my father always told me, never trust a guy with two first names.
I remember you telling me that story.
I had Billy Ray and Tommy Ivan to work with. But anyway, getting away from that, that's pretty well. I didn't play much, but I had, believe it or not, for some reason, I hardly played during the season. I think I scored one goal, my first shift with Stan Mikita.
It's on YouTube.
I never played with Stan again.
It's on YouTube when you scored
all year.
Yeah.
I hardly played, but I didn't realize. I just saw a video of me playing. I played all 4 games. We beat in our first round. I think we beat
Detroit.
Detroit. That's correct. Mm-hmm. We beat Detroit. We won the President's Trophy for first place. We had Tony
Prince of Wales.
It was a great year for the Blackhawks, and I learned a lot about goaltending because I used to stay out with Tony. I know Tony very well, and I learned a lot about goaltending because he trusted me to shoot at him. I was fairly accurate, but I wasn't very hard.
Yeah.
So he'd let me shoot at him, and we used to actually, before every game, whatever team he played. Of course, at that time, there were 12 teams.
Sure.
So he had a book on every team we played. Yeah, and he said they did this and that, and then we would practice that at every practice. So I learned a lot about goaltending and coaching. And then at the end of the season, after hardly playing, I decided, I got a phone call, and they wanted me to go to the Western Hockey League for a 3-year contract. And I'd been working out all summer, hoping to play regularly with the Blackhawks. And when they did that, I kind of had a little bit of an altercation with Mr. Ivan.
He was the general manager then, Tommy Ivan. Yeah.
Tommy, yeah, he called me and it's all going to be in my book, so I can't, But anyway. We had a conversation about somebody sitting in their white ivory tower and telling me what to do with my life. And I didn't quite like that. And that they were sending me a contract to the Western. It was a 3-year contract, but it was to the Western League. So at that point, I looked across the river, Lake Superior State. I can go back to school and finished college, and I decided to do that. And I had a job with a television station in Sault Ste. Marie. And I did some sports. And the proudest moment I had in hockey was I made the same money that they would have paid me to go to the Western League.
To the Western League.
Yeah, I made the same money and went back to school. So,
Gene, I want to stop you for 1 sec. So.
Sure.
In this conversation that we're having, because I want to talk a little bit more about the modern day, you're writing. Are they writing a book about you?
Oh yeah. Well, I have a fellow that I've had 2 or 3 people talk to me about my career in that, and I think I'd finally have someone that that's going to put it all down, and
This is
we're
fantastic.
talking now. And but
Yeah.
you know, it's the way you structure a book for me is me. It's like it's very difficult, and but we've had so many stories and so
Oh, yeah.
many eras, and
I mean, we're talking 1954 to now. There's
yeah,
gonna be a
that's
lot of
correct.
stories. There's gonna be
That's
a lot.
right, and there's a
But
lot of
is
a
there
lot
a
of
is
themes.
there, Gene, is there a secret on what the book is gonna be called?
Well, that's funny too, because we've had so many titles that we thought maybe we'd put all the titles that we thought of on the cover, and then have the actual title in the middle,
Right, right. Oh my
because
God. This is gonna,
even I just was talking to the fellow that's I'm doing the book with last night. In fact, we meet once a week or twice a week. And he said, no, we're going to have one title. He didn't. I says, I think I have another title.
yeah, another title, right? Oh God. No, but what's gonna be great about this book is how I'm sure these stories, it'll be appreciated to what we see today. You have seen
That's cool.
so
Yeah.
many changes
Yeah. And
in
I was,
70
you know what?
years.
The most important thing to me is I want to have a book. I want firsthand knowledge, more or less. I really don't want to have third hand or what I heard or anything like that. It's it'll be firsthand knowledge.
Yes,
With so many people in the game, like me getting back into. I went back to school. I came to Chicago. Went to school here, and then I was at Rolling Meadows, and you go through the whole thing at hockey schools in a lot of areas of
sure,
Chicago,
sure,
and I went to Elmhurst College while I was doing that, and I was coaching the Cardinals one year, and
sure.
working at Rolling Meadows and going to school. And
Did you also coach the Chicago Nordiques?
I didn't coach. I coached the Chicago Cardinals
With the Nardellas?
with the Nardellas, and then of course, I coached the Chicago Warriors,
Yes,
and we played in the Chicago Stadium, the only other team outside of the Blackhawks to
sure.
ever play in the Chicago or call it Chicago Stadium your home ice.
You were
And
very, you
we
were
played
very,
there in '72. Yes.
Gene, you were very instrumental in a way for me in the late 70s. I went to Holy Cross High School in River
Okay,
Grove, and the Nardellas got involved with Holy Cross, and
that's
God rest
correct.
his soul,
Big Mike. Yeah.
Mike and Jimmy Nardella. And I'm going to bring up a funny story at the end of the podcast of when I met you and what you said to me. This is
Oh,
something
is
you'll
that right?
but it was fantastic.
Well,
And
I was. We used to give out report cards at my hockey
oh,
school. Yeah, and it wasn't a report card. Did you come to our hockey school? Because we didn't pull any punches,
sure. No, no,
And,
you were straightforward. Yeah, for
but
sure.
anyway, yeah, we ran hockey schools all over the area. Started at Rolling Meadows. They were on Owl
Yes.
Drive, and Timmy Mueller
Jimmy
was
Mueller. Sure.
Tim Mueller was in college then and
Yeah.
working in the summer,
He just
and then
retired from
hired
coaching the
on.
game.
And I was trying to be the first pro at an ice rink, a hockey pro, and I actually wrote up a program for players that played professional hockey or in the NHL, and if they did so many hockey schools and they took a course, that we even put together a course, and I kind of found out that people that were running the Players Association. At that time, I went to the head of the Players Association,
Mm,
who I knew was Alan Eagleson, who I knew very, very well on my way before he was in fact, we got him to represent the American Hockey League when there was a wildcat strike. And I had a lot to do with getting him to represent us because
Yeah.
I was a player rep in the American Hockey League, and that's how he got into the game. I don't even
see.
want to talk about it. But
Yeah, I know.
I'm
Jeff
not.
is, yeah,
It's not a. I almost blame myself for him getting involved because
yeah.
I had met him and knew
What-
him, and he was Bobby Orr's agent.
Yeah, Gene, when you hear the stories and the damage he did to a lot of players,
Yes, yes,
especially
yeah,
Bobby Orr, it's amazing. I have to ask
yes,
you a question. I
yeah.
have to ask
And
you a
you know,
question.
I don't want. I'll go into that one.
No, no, that's okay. That's something
But the
we'll,
point is, he got into the business, and I approached him about this program that I think I was probably the first pro hockey teacher at an ice rink.
yeah,
And my idea was to certify from the players. This was 1970.
the 70s.
And this is before anybody was taking any courses or, to be coach and stuff like that.
Sure.
I said, Al, why don't we have the players, uh, you know, uh, give a certification to
Sure.
pro players
Yeah.
if they played in the National League, so they can come back and show that certificate. And I showed him everything. I had it all set up because I was at Lake Superior State then. And I wanted to have a license. We
Sure.
licensed the players so they could walk in after their career and say, "Hey, I'm an NHL teaching pro."
Bro. Gene,
And,
Gene,
and
I want to ask you a question.
yeah,
And I appreciate you elaborating on that. In all these years you've done this, especially on the coaching and on the managing side, of course, being the senior advisor and the director of hockey operations, what is the biggest change now that you see in the hockey player of today from those early days when we're talking about the 1970s when you became the coach? Do you see a big difference?
well, the size number one.
Okay.
The big man can move like the little guy, whereas years ago, the smaller people could play and handle what's going on, and we obviously even today they can handle it, and they get stronger, and because of the off ice and stuff. So you could still a small player can play, but he better be really strong on his feet,
Strong.
strong. Like I mean, a small player now is he might be 5'8", 5'9", but he probably weighs 190,
190.
something like that.
We're
or
looking at
180.
we're looking at a guy like Connor Bedard right now.
Yeah, what's he almost 180, right?
180, right?
175.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he'll probably put on a few more pounds, and he's awesome. And but the game has changed. And, really now the big difference was we were more. It was more of a game of chess in the old days. You stayed on your wing. The centerman was in the middle. It was more organized. I mean,
Yes.
that's what they ended up calling, because hockey went from shinny to organized hockey when they put the lines in. And you almost could say we're almost back to shinny.
The shitty. No, Eugene, a
It's
great
five
point.
guys up and five guys back.
Yeah.
And you better have your players know how to play defense,
Defense.
left wing, center. The only they're actually playing some goal because they block shots too.
Yeah.
So they have
Gene,
to almost know every position.
You're correct in saying that, because now the game, again, like you said, has become this free-flowing style.
Yes, it's five guys up and five guys back.
Five guys back.
And I'm telling you, that's the game. And the centermen are becoming they have to know how to play defense, and they have to know how to play center, obviously. And the defensemen have to play center and defense.
Sure.
And it's that kind of game, and I love it. I think I wish I was playing. I mean, I think I'd leave the zone a little early, the defensive zone. I mean, when you got some legs and you can move,
Yeah, right.
it's
Exactly.
a great game. The only problem you have today is, I think, I'm not so sure that we're not going to have we're having more injuries than we
Yes.
ever have. And I think it's because we got 4 referees on the ice, right? Or 4 officials.
It's a little crowded out there.
You got the goalies and 12. Then you got 16 people on the ice.
Sure.
The ice didn't get any bigger.
No.
And I kind of kid some of our off ice people that that have all the stats. I says, is there a stat saying how much room does every individual have on the ice today? Can you figure that out?
Exactly.
With 16 people on the ice, it's 200 by 90 or 200 by 85.
Crazy.
How much room do you really have for each person?
Yep. Gene, I want to ask you. Yeah, exactly. I want to ask you a question. As like you said, the players are getting bigger. There's no more room. You have the 4 referees, the whole situation. And of course, now the speed of this game is like, lightning hitting a freight train sometimes.
That's right.
And it's crazy. I want to just do a little pause here because we got a couple minutes left, but I want to do a little pause to remind our audience we are visiting today with Gene Ubriaco, who is the Senior Advisor, Director of Hockey Operations for the Chicago Wolves. Gene doesn't need an introduction, especially to hockey, and in a legend here in Illinois. And I have to ask you a question, and then we're going to go into a 5-question thing where you're going to give me a couple word answers. But I have to ask you the ultimate question. How was it for you in 1994-95 to come back to Chicago to be the coach for the Wolves?
Well, you know what? It really was an easy decision because Chicago, I ended my career here, like I said, and I worked all around Chicago at the different rinks. And when the opportunity came up, and it came up because I was coaching the Italian Olympic team in '92.
Yes,
and
another great honor.
Yeah, and I coached Italy, and I was fortunate enough to have Don Levin and the GM at that time was I don't know why I'm blanking out there just for a minute, but
I forget the GM in 94-95. I know Don Levin, and then
it was Grant
Mulvey.
Mulvey, pardon me. Yeah, Grant Mulvey. Yeah. And he got in touch with me, and then they came over to Italy, and I met Don Levin in Italy, in Rome, actually, in Milan, actually.
In Milano.
And we were playing a game or something in there, and we went for dinner, and I gave him. I had put up a resume of because I had talked the resume that I used to coach in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
I had still had a resume of my resume when I coached the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
So I put the Penguins together and all that. And Don Levin read my book, and it was how I would run the team and the players. And I was really prepared for the Penguin job. I didn't get it the year that I prepared the book, but the following year I did get the job with the Pittsburgh Penguins after this preparation had been done.
And you did a great job there too.
I used that to.
Gene, I want to remind our audience, if they don't know this about you, you are part of so many Hall of Fames. One from your town, of course, St. Sault Ste. Marie. You're, of course, I think even in the Baltimore Hall of Fame.
Yes, we have a small one.
And then the distinct honor of being here in Illinois in 2012 in the Illinois Hockey Hall of Fame. And I have that distinct honor because I was inducted in 19. So when I can be inducted with a guy like Gene Ubriaco, it warms my heart. And then, of course, the one that I think you deserved, and you are inducted here into the Italian American Sports Hall of Fame.
Yes, isn't that incredible? That is really. Joe DiMaggio's in that. So
yeah, Joe DiMaggio and Rogue Yogi Bear. I think you're in good company. All right,
yeah,
I'm gonna give you 5 questions, and then I'm gonna leave you with a funny story that happened with me and you about 50 some years ago. probably don't remember, but you yelled at me. But
Oh,
anyway, here's
yeah,
our
yeah.
our
Well, I was coached by all tough people.
I know. Here's our first question. 5 questions. First one is this: who's that early mentor? Who was that early mentor besides your mother or father that you still remember to this day?
Well, I went to St. Mike's, and Father Bauer was there. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was quite famous. He ran Team
Sure.
Canada, and Father Bauer was one of our coaches. But he influenced me, and you might say in the wrong way, because he once told me that I would never play in the NHL.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I was too small.
He gave you that drive.
But he made,
Yeah.
because he told me that, it made me want to make him wrong.
He gave you
He gave me that incentive,
that incentive.
and I just said I am playing in the NHL,
They're great.
and I think that was the biggest inducement. I had a good coach in Frank Mathers in Hershey. I
Okay.
played for 4 years. I probably learned more about coaching and the right way,
Sure.
because he was a gentleman and
Prepared you for the future of your great coaching.
Yes.
So I got a second question for you. The second question is this: what is your favorite all-time movie that you could watch 200 times and not get bored?
Oh boy,
Give me 2
I
of them.
watch
Give me 2 of
movies
them.
now, and I think I'm the director. You know what I mean?
Give me 2 of them. Give me 2 of them.
So I'm a pain in the neck watching movies, because my poor wife, I tell her who the criminal is before the end of the show, and most of the time I'm pretty darn close. But anyway, I would have to, uh, probably Ben-Hur.
Oh yeah, Charlton Heston.
Ben-Hur, probably.
Charlton Heston.
That was an incredible movie.
Yes, the actor Charlton Heston, correct? Charlton.
That's correct. Charlton Heston, and that would be the movie. Yeah, probably.
Right. Third question, Gene. Third one. If you had to interview somebody, since I'm doing the interviewing today, I'm interviewing Gene Ubriaco. If you had to pick a guy to interview, I know your answer. It can't be me. It can't be me.
No.
But who would you want to interview?
Well, oh God.
You can back away a little bit. You're probably right on top of that camera.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Remember, it can't be me.
Okay. Well,
One or two.
Who's that? The Denzel Washington.
Wow. Okay. Great actor. Great
actor. Has a lot of depth. He bridges for people. I think he says the right things.
Very classy man.
Country rather than himself.
Very classy man. Question 4. Who are the 5 best you ever saw that would be on a line? Center, left wing, right, and 2 defensemen, and the goalie, and a goalie. You pick the 5 and the goalie in your era or this era. Who's the best 5 in goal you ever saw?
In goal? Well, obviously, I'm very partial to Tony. He had 15 shutouts, and he has a record that'll never be broken.
Tony Esposito, incredible.
They will not play that many games. I mean, the closest they've come is to 10 in one season. He had 15. That was that season that we were
69-70, 1969-70.
That's great. And I was a rook. I mean, that was my first. That was not my first. It was my 3rd year in the NHL. But
he was incredible.
I did work out with him every day, and I saw what it took. The other guy would be Johnny Bauer. I really had a lot of respect for Johnny Bauer,
great Toronto goalie.
Toronto Maple Leafs, and he, they won cups, and I'd be in camp with him, and he'd even try in the shooting.
Who are your two defensemen, Gene?
Defenseman, I'll be honest with you. When I was growing up, I was a Detroit Red Wing fan, and Red Kelly was awesome. And of course, you got to go with the guys like Bobby Orr. I can remember Bobby Orr. My first year was my first year in the NHL. He came up in '67. It was his first. I can remember going in the corner, and the
Right.
puck went from one corner to the other, and I'm saying, "There's the puck. Go get it."
Sure.
And Bobby Orr was already on his toes, going
Wow.
for the
Incredible.
puck. He was like a cat.
He was
To me,
fast.
Bobby Orr was like a cat. He acted quicker than most people.
Sure.
And then when he got the puck, obviously, so it would be Bobby Orr, and I always liked Doug Harvey, of course. But up front, well, I saw Gretzky when he was 15 in Sioux, Canada, and he was playing for the Sioux Greyhounds. And he reminded me of Stan Mikita even then, at 15.
He was slick.
One thing I noticed that, like Stan, you could fire the puck. You could fire a puck from the defenseman from any corner in your defensive zone,
Sure.
and he either caught it, knocked it down with his stick, but he always got the puck. He made a lot of defensemen look good. And then he was like, you went to hit him, he was like a willow. He did the moonwalk before Michael Jackson on the ice. He did the moonwalk on the ice. I mean, they'd go to hit him, and he'd be skating backwards.
For sure.
And
Who was your left winger? Who's your left winger? Who's your left winger, Gene?
Left winger Ted Lindsay, because so many of us try to beat Ted Lindsay. When he was a small guy, but you had to be a little dirty to make your way. I know.
Hard-nosed player. Hard-nosed player.
And then, of course, right wing was the best of all.
Yeah.
I would have to say Gordie Howe, because in one man he covered, he would be the best passer, the best scorer, and the toughest guy on your team.
Yeah.
So, he qualified for 3 or 4 or 5 areas of the game.
Oh, sure. Was a strong man, a very
of course, right behind him, Mario Lemieux would be next on the. I was fortunate to coach Mario, and I was in that game where he scored all 5 different ways.
Yeah.
And so I remember I would follow Mario on the ice, and just when they were skating and warming up, and I would come up behind them, and I'd be behind them. And I used to do this with players, and I'd have a puck and throw it on either side of them with their back to me. And with Mario, many players never even saw the puck. I would throw it slowly beside them. While I was behind them.
Wow. Mario
and
Lemieux.
Invariably, when I did that with Mario, whether it's on the right side or the left side, he'd stick out his stick and he'd see it. His peripheral vision was incredible.
Incredible.
It was incredible.
Last question.
He was a great, great player, and I was lucky. I had him and Paul Coffey, and
tremendous. That was tremendous.
Better than that.
Last question. You've had an unbelievable career in hockey as a player, a coach, a builder, an organizer, Hall of Fames, everything, legendary here in Chicago. If you had to do it all over again, is Gene Ubriaco doing this life all over again?
I wouldn't change a thing. Ahiha, the deaf school, we didn't mention. I've been with them for 50 years. I'm still with them. I've seen the boys are now 60 years old, some of them, because we've been there 50 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're great fathers, they're great businessmen, and they're great teachers. And they're our alumni, and I've seen it all. We have a former player now, Kevin Delaney is the president and running the club, and he was a former player. And
fantastic.
I remember him asking me to be on the board, and I said I don't want to be on the board.
Exactly,
I said, put the deaf kids on the board.
Sure.
And he put deaf boys on the board. And I said, I'll be your consigliere. So I talked to him a lot. I just talked to him the other day because we went into the tournament. We just got beat for the gold medal. We won the silver medal in Rochester or in Buffalo just the other day. So I would say I wouldn't change a thing. It was tough, but you know what? The wife I had,
Yeah.
I
Kudos to Nella.
couldn't have made it without her.
Kudos to Nella, Francine, and
My
Jean.
wife Noah is.
Yeah.
We used
Well,
to live
listen,
our life day to day. Now we live it minute to minute.
and big hugs to her. I
And
remember.
if I was, my suggestion is for everybody, live your life minute to minute.
Okay, I'm
The
going to tell you
days
the
go
Holy
on.
Cross. I'm going to tell you the Holy Cross story. Then I gotta go. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So it's the opening game. You were helping the Nardellas get that organized, that organization. Of course, I was the goaltender at Holy Cross. And you came in the room, and we were all awestruck when you walked in the room. And all of a sudden that day, you went around to everybody. We opened up against Maine South, and we're playing them in the Oakton Ice Arena. And you came over by me as I had the goalie pads on, and you said, "Now remember, you don't let anything in." Well, let's fast forward to the end of the game. The final score was Maine South 8, Holy Cross 2. You went around the room and talked to everybody and told them basically what we had to do to get better. And I'll never forget, you came up to me and you go, "You don't listen. You weren't supposed to let anything in." Gene, I love you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
We got to do it again. And I truly thank you for today. You are terrific and one of the classiest men in hockey, and I truly appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. That's why I moved back to Chicago, because the people here, they respect hockey and the game, and I'll tell you, the families and everything in this city
Sure.
is like none other. Like none other. You'd ask anybody that ever played for the Blackhawks.
You got it.
You know, you're always a Blackhawk to so many people,
For
and
sure.
it's really appreciated.
All right, Gene, you have a great day. Continued success being the senior advisor here, and we'll see each other down the road.
Yeah, and the Wolves will be back stronger than ever next year.
Okay, and but yeah, best of luck to the organization, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Gene. Good night.